Is this thing on? Can y'all hear me? Welcome back. I'm excited to start the final panel of what's already been an extraordinary day. So thank you to each person who's presented thus far. Thank you to every member of the audience who's been so engaged and amazing. The energy in this room has been excellent. And thank you to everyone for just modeling the practices of beloved community that we talked about at the top of today's gathering. The principles that we've been guiding ourselves by are not just a model for what's possible in this room, but for what's possible in this country. And I'm encouraged to join each of you in deepening the work to making sure that these principles are instituted not only here, but in the walls beyond us. So today we're going to be talking about initiatives and collectives that have been led by system-impacted artists. We're going to have a conversation about the artistic journeys of each of our panelists, the communities that they find themselves in and that they create, and also initiatives that they and other incarcerated or formerly incarcerated people have led and are leading. Before I introduce the members of our panel, I just want to acknowledge a few people who are in the audience today. And of course, it's only right that I begin with my parents, who just a few weeks ago, they celebrated 52 years of marriage and family. My mom, in addition to creating a career as a social worker, has spent many years engaged in the arts, working as a docent and board members at different museums and cultural institutions, including locally the Contemporary Arts Center, and serving as the president of the Sal Endowment Committee at the Cincinnati Art Museum. And relevantly to today's program, she co-founded the ambassadors to the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, which is a group of Black women philanthropists who are supporting the work of the center. And since she did that, over 10 years ago, membership in the group has tripled. It's a whole brilliant model for ways that we can re-envision philanthropy, and I'm so inspired by her and her work, so thank you, Mama. And my father, Dr. Wendell O'Neill, is a chemist and also an artist in his own right, a musician. Just a few weeks ago, can I say the number, Daddy? Yep. As he celebrated his 80th birthday. He celebrated it with an exhibition of photographs that he's taken around the years of his travels throughout the world, and it was just extraordinary. He also played a major role in what we'll be experiencing here together this weekend. I've been calling him my street team. I live in Brooklyn, and as I've been organizing the tour that we'll be taking on Sunday through Underground Railroad sites locally, Daddy was the one going around and meeting the people and taking the pictures and helping facilitate everything that needed to happen on the ground. So thank you both, love you, and so glad that you're here. I also want to acknowledge one of my greatest intellectual influences and teachers, Dr. Patricia Hill Collins, who is an incredible professor and author and local Cincinnati treasure, and you're just gonna have to sit there and endure me singing your praises. I knew her work for years before I had the pleasure of being able to meet her and be taught by her. She's the author of books including Fighting Words and Black Feminist Thought, and we're honored that you're here, and I'm grateful personally to be able to see you again after so many years. So thank you for being here, Dr. Hill Collins. And lastly, I'd like to acknowledge Julie Ehrlich from the Mellon Foundation. We simply would not be able to be here together if it wasn't for the generous support of this foundation. So thank you so much, not only for being present in deed, but also showing up in person to support this work. We're grateful for you. Thank you. So now I'd like to transition to the people that we'll be hearing from today, beginning with Amy Nisman. If I read their full bios, we would spend our entire time together with me doing that because they're all so accomplished. So I'm just going to read a couple of sentences for each person and then direct you either to the website or to the program where you can learn more about their incredible work. Amy is a self-taught visual artist and filmmaker. Since her release from prison 4 years ago, she's been an active member in the arts community, curating the work of her contemporaries and creating programming that allows for meaningful dialogue and audience activation. Her body of work interrogates a visible longing for justice and a release from trauma. Amy Nisman. Y'all can clap. Russell Craig is a self-taught Philadelphia-based artist. He's the co-founder of Right of Return USA, which is the first national fellowship dedicated to supporting formerly incarcerated artists. His work is a part of the permanent collection of the Brooklyn Museum and has been featured at MoMA PS1, the Philadelphia African American Museum, Martos Gallery, and Aperture Gallery. Dark Reflections at Malin Gallery is his first solo exhibition in New York City. Let's give it up for Russell. Joining us by Zoom is Gary Harrell. After 45 years of incarceration, Gary Harrell is now a free man. He blends block printing with pointillism to create vivid portraits. His artwork has been featured in exhibitions at the Tides Thoreau Center for Sustainability, the Jewett Gallery, Rotunda Gallery, Hearst Art Gallery, and Wemmick Fine Arts Gallery, among others. His piece, Restore Justice, was recently featured in the Washington Post. Let's give it up for Gary. Lastly, I'd like to acknowledge Kenny Reems, who's unable to join us today. But I want to talk a bit about his work, and we'll show some of his images later on in the presentation. As a young person, Mr. Reems was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death, becoming the then youngest inmate on Arkansas's death row, despite not having pulled the trigger. His art, which explores the inhumane, arbitrary nature of capital punishment and the exploitative character of the prison industrial complex, has been featured in exhibits from New York to Norway, Little Rock to London, and many locations in between. Let's give it up for Kenny. So we're going to delve into presentations by each of the artists before opening it up to a community Q&A later. And we'll begin with Amy. Take it away.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Okay. I know it's like the end of the day, so I'm going to try to be really concise and not belabor this. So what you're looking at is the Returning Artists Guild logo. The central figure is Gomi. He is the god of mass incarceration. Our slogan has been, "Don't let Gomi eat your children." The Gomi on the left is a print that I did in prison off of like a styrofoam lunch tray. And that's our little bit more cleaned up logo. Go ahead. Thank you. I won't stay on my personal work too long, but these are 3 paintings that are from a series about public property. The work that I make is pretty much just process driven and a lot of time and a lot of layering and a lot of looking and undoing and scraping off to do over and things like that. But the point of public property for me is when I was incarcerated, I was meditating, I had taken off my shoes and I got a ticket for sun tanning. And then when I was heard on the ticket, the language was destruction of state property. And so that really stuck with me for like a long time in terms of understanding how people are property now, how they've been property before, and then what the relationship of me and my body, something that is considered property or state property, how does that relate to other public spaces? So, I got into like graffiti and things like that for that reason, because I feel like public spaces are now an extension of my personal space.
can't talk about the rag without talking about my best friend, who's somewhere in the back. Shout out, Kamisha. She and I, to create the Returning Artist Guild has been an incredible labor of love. It's come out of our personal finances, and as two single moms with multiple jobs, those finances are limited, and so it's been nothing short of miraculous that we've done any of the things that we've done, really. But so the two of us were incarcerated together. She talked about this a little bit this morning. We made films, we built an art therapy program, and then after release, it seemed really, really important that we find a way to continue that community, not just as a support system for each other, but for the people that we left behind, the people that were out with us, the artists. All right, so this is one picture of the guild, just a few folks pictured, but I wanted to kind of put some faces on the screen. And we're not just visual artists, I guess is my point with this slide, is we try to be as inclusive as possible to what art can be, who can make art, what kinds of things those can be. And so we try to pull in, activism, and we try to pull in entrepreneurship a lot alongside with the, visual art or film or things like that. Yeah, okay, I think I wanted to shout out some more people. That's Gwen Garth up there in the top left. She's been holding it down in Cleveland. She was super inspiring to Kamisha and myself. She's been out of prison, I think, for several decades now, but in that time she got a school bus and was doing mobile art programming and was just really a thought leader, I think, in knowing that you can do a lot without really any support or resources if you have the passion to do it. So shortly after, Kamisha and I founded The Rag. We had a pop-up. That's a picture of Kamisha in our first studio space. And that is the first large-scale work that I ever made, kind of chilling in the back there. There's an image of a pop-up show that we did recently. That's Mary Evans in the center. She's an incredible Ohio artist that you should know more about. She does re-entry stories for WYSO out of Yellow Springs, and is working her way through the NPR world. So we're super proud of Mary. Those are some of the assemblages that Kamisha and I made recently, and a couple more rag people. Yep. More examples of just kind of what our pop-ups can look like, I guess, what they have looked like. Performers are really integral, I think, in terms of taking the visual art aspect and actually creating an event and creating some community and creating some engagement. So I'm really happy that we have different kinds of performers in our ranks. We're working on making things more experiential, so that taped off cell map was something that an artist did very early on, but something that we are ever increasingly thinking about more in terms of how do we bring people into these materials and into these spaces. Make It Spark was a really fun thing. One time we did a bunch of games, carceral related games, and so we gave people these objects and tried to see if anyone could figure out how to light a candle. And that was really enjoyable for us because these are skills that we have, or insider knowledge. And it's just a way of making an access point, right? It creates a conversation. It allows for a little bit of lightness around the stuff that is so heavy. Yep. So I wanted to show some images from some other artists and kind of talk about why it's important that we're doing what we're doing. So art as a point of personal autonomy. When you're incarcerated, and oftentimes the sort of pre-prisons before you're actually incarcerated really deny people autonomy and the ability to advocate for themselves, get the things that they need, envision the futures that they want to have, all those kinds of things. And that if we were going to create this group and create these spaces and these platforms for other artists, that there had to be an ethical lens. Part of that ethical lens is that we center currently formerly incarcerated people in the process every step of the way. So much of what I get approached with from outside rarely centers the expertise of the people that they want to, quote, help. So
I think for us, it's about making sure that the artists that we're working with feel really supported, feel autonomous, and can trust our practices. All the way from we don't take a cut of sales to leveraging every opportunity that we get. If it doesn't work for us, we're going to pass it on, etc. Yeah, and then the other part of that is just about art making as a form of release and community building. Kamisha says there's no better outlet for our trauma. I think for me, there was just no other outlet for it. Like, they had to go somewhere. And it's the only healthy thing I can really do personally to kind of like shed some of what I need to shed, and also move into a more positive space. A lot of that is about building community. So outside of these pop-ups, a lot of what Kamisha and I do is like basically case management. You know, like we are in communication with artists all the time, dealing with all of the struggle and the resources that they might need, or just being like the ear or the arm for another person. So really what we've seen is just like the impact of our community being able to hold space for each other without other people gifting us that or without expectation, right? Just like real space for each other and with each other. So on that note, we've been applying to funding like a lot lately. We are on top of how do we actually make this happen, because we need a lot of different kinds of spaces, whether that's making space, equipment space, residency or housing space, gallery space, event space, whether that's a one-off or an ongoing event. All of the technical equipment and skill building that needs to happen, especially folks that have done longer time or folks that went away before cell phones were really like attached to us. So, and then also like dealing with members that have kids and need their kids to be somewhere like while they're doing something else that may be productive or like mental health based. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we've applied for funding for. We'll find out end of August if we're gonna like get the bread to buy a building. So we're hopeful, but if not, we'll continue on building capacity in other ways and keep on keeping on. Yeah, okay, so this last image I threw up, it's a very old JPEG kiosk, but I just put it up there to talk about kind of the way that we are shifting our work. So we've got shows booked out through 2025 at this point, and something that occurred to us is a lot of what we had been doing was sharing the artwork and talking about the problem and talking about the pain rather than moving into an imaginative space about abolition. So all of the upcoming shows are going to be about imagining abolition, reworking carceral materials, creating interactive installation spaces, and kind of pulling people into a conversation that acknowledges what has come before and what's currently happening, but also empowers people to imagine differently. Yep, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. Gary, can you unmute yourself? Can you
Hello?
hear us? There you go. There you go, there I go, there we go.
You got me?
Yes, we got you, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy to see you all. And I have some exciting news. I applied for a grant from River Bueno Center for the Arts, Richard Street, San Francisco. They gave me a grant for $1,000. I appreciate it. I said I shared that with my sister. First grant I ever received. I brought out some art. This is an actual block print. Can we see it?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. That particular block print?
Yes.
Okay. And that's with the Magnolia child with the cats. And the reason why I done is because who would think those cats would all be around that bird and not do anything to it? And that's just nature in the love of art. You make things that really aren't, that can be. And I appreciate that. This is something I did. West Point was in Surratt. Surratt taught me, well, after reading this book, because he's passed on, about pointillism and what it taught and the variations of colors that I would use to blend them and make them to where it was aesthetic to the eye. And I've been doing art since 1996. I started doing it because I was doing life since I came into my cellar. He told me, he says, man, you need to start doing something, man. Like, dude, you know, why you tripping on me? But the whole thing about it, he was getting me to see that it's bigger than just this cell. And I need to do something with some of the life sense that I have, rather than just sit in the cell and do nothing. He encouraged me to do something, and I met with him about a month ago in Sacramento. He's doing fine, so I just like to thank some people. His name is Larry Miller, along with Lori Brooks. She's really been astronomical in our prison establishment in California, because she with 2 or 3 other people helped keep Arts and Corrections. It's about 15 facilities over when the state stopped giving them money and people volunteered to come in and things of that nature. So there's a lot of wonderful things that happen through art and express yourself in a way that you can't really express yourself because you can't verbally say some of the things that you create. That's what I've had the opportunity to do, and that's what art does for me. And I would like to thank Bobby Admin, Katya McCullough for sharing with me how to put what I'm thinking on the canvas. Because it's really like a difficult trip when you look at the canvas, like what are you going to do to this canvas? That's the question I always pose when I get ready to start doing art. And Showerworks is doing phenomenal. I just had a meeting with some people that just gave me the direction that I needed to go in, really to get it funded. Everything of that nature. That's why I'm just like living for the world. In life, there's life I can do. Even though I was doing a lot of art, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And in the course of me being able to create Showerworks, a nonprofit organization, and Moments gave me a day takeover, and that was totally awesome. I appreciate Moments for that. I'm able to move forward and have that second chance at a first class life. I don't want to talk too much about myself. I think I talk quite a bit, and we have a lot of other people on the panels that need to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Russell, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you. I'm gonna make it, I'm brief, I won't be long. But before I get into any images of my work, I do wanna acknowledge there's a lot of people in this room, and I appreciate all y'all that was there for this journey. My friends from California, Nicole, yourself, seeing me long time ago. I've been out for about 9 years or so, and basically when I was in prison, I had a game plan that I would use art to be an escape out of my situation in prison and poverty and the streets and all that, and recidivism, and keep coming back to prison and whatever. And I really believed in myself when I came up with it that I was going to use art to get out or whatever. And I was like a foster kid or whatever like that. So in prison, I never got visits, never got no letters and nothing like that. And a total of 12 years altogether, because I never had that anyway. So it was very important for me to use art as like a tool to change my situation, and it was a lot of people that see my journey, and appreciate everybody that gave me a chance to come to like Cali to do a talk or like anything like that. It's like really amazing. Then to have right of return, to be a part of it, to come from my situation, to be a part of we give 20,000 to 7 different artists from around the country to pursue their art, interests and things like that for the last 4 years. And shout out to Mylan because he got some funding for them to expand things, and things like that. So long story short, I just wanted to say that, and then we can get into like some of the images of like my work, and I can explain what I create and breaking down the inspiration behind the pieces. So this piece right here, I'm from Philadelphia. I live in Brooklyn now, but this is called The Program. And basically what I'm touching the violence in Philly is like real bad. I'm also the artist in residence with the DA office of Philadelphia, and they gave me the details of like the murders and the things that's happened and the way that killing like, and then also I got a cousin that's a firefighter, and he'd give me pictures of like murders, and I was sharing them with other people of like the dead bodies and stuff like that, and it's traumatizing is not even a word that can really like sum it up. So Agnes Gunn was a blessing to meet her, and in our conversation she was saying that I need to find the light because I was making works that was kind of dark, like using blood, like real blood. I went to the butcher and got real blood and recreated the ink block Rorschach test because I'm dealing with like the mental like trauma that we go through, like even if you don't get murdered, like to see like your family member murdered or like just the stuff that I be seeing is traumatizing. It's like vicariously traumatizing also when I'm putting it into work. But as a kid, I liked it like comic book characters and stuff like that, and I like told myself how to do like all my art. When I was in prison, I told myself how to read and write and things like that. Got my GED, studied books on art, and like my game plan was to escape. I would be like a runaway slave. Just the prison system is slavery. I'm a runaway slave type. So that was a Wolverine. I want to go back to that a little bit because I want to talk about the piece. I won't be long. So it's a character named Wolverine from X-Men, and his powers is he can like heal himself if he get damaged and stuff like that. But a lot of people don't know his origin. Weapon X, the government put him under like this program in which they put like virtual reality on his head and things like that, and it was like showing him all these images of like violence or whatever, so it made him like rageful, where he always felt like he had to fight and things like that. And that's the same thing that they got going on with young black men in America or whatever. They got drill music and they got all kinds of systems that's been going on for like a long time, all kinds of the Willie Lynch and all that thing, where they got us against each other. It's a whole programming and people don't be understanding why things are the way they are. So I use that kind of, when Agnes Gunn said you need to find a light, I started like using like comic book characters and stuff like that to like give the message, kind of like giving like the pill and the ice cream or whatever. And then I got the Ben-Day dots in the background because she sold a Roy Lichtenstein masterpiece painting for $165 million and gave all the money away to social injustice, and I received a grant from that. So this piece, the show that I just had in Chelsea was entitled Dark Reflections. I am Groot. Groot is a character from Marvel too. I'm like keeping it like going in a lot of the pieces. But in this, and then all of the pieces is on leather bags. So the leather represents like the hide, like the skin of like the cow. So I'm making that reference to like the black body mistreated in America through the prison system and racism and white supremacy police and stuff like that. So that's what when you see it on the leather, that's what it means. And in my first batch of leather, I got from Ernest Joyner. He was in a federal prison. He was making these bags, so I would buy his bags and then I would cut them up and sew them back together and use them as my canvas, because I'm like using a black body in which I'm putting a narrative on top to make it work more layered. So right here, Dark Reflections, I'm looking back into my past. It's like me reflecting. One time in my foster home, they had me do a psychiatric evaluation. They asked me to draw a tree. I would draw a tree in the corner. They said that me drawing a tree in the corner means that I'm stuck in the past. So being as though the show was called Dark Reflections, I'm looking back at my past, and my past was like dark. So that's why I'm in the tree, and I am the tree, I am Groot. And that part where you see the branches and they like broke off those years, my whole 20s was in jail, so those years are gone. But then that part that you're seeing that's growing or whatever, that's where I'm at now. I'm moving forward and all that. This one is called Traumatized. This is basically what I just was speaking on or whatever, but I use Incredible Hulk for this piece because Bruce Banner is like a genius or whatever, but then once he become the Hulk, he'd be like, you wouldn't like me if I was angry. So like in the old school Luther Rigno, I used to love that show because it was like really cheesy, but like but it was like entertaining, and I still be tripping off it. So that's what came to mind when I did this. So this is the leather, but then I also took comic pages and I glued them and I collage like style, whatever. I thought that was like interesting to have them all like that. And then that eye is like the green eye of envy, and then also Luther Rigno eye would turn green. They had like that effect where he was transforming or whatever. But I also wanted to touch on like, sometimes you'll have like an issue with people. This happens in jail a lot too, where it's like beefs, but it's like a lot of the times people be dealing with their own traumas. It don't even be about what you did. They be dealing with themselves, and you just be somebody who they like take it out on or whatever. So that's what came to mind with this piece. The Death of Maurice is a remake of The Death of Marat, French painting. French Revolution, and when I seen that painting in my art, I just graduated from Bard too.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah, because that's where I seen this painting in art history class. And when I seen it, it reminded me of overcrowded in prison in the early 2000s in Philadelphia. They would have like, it's already sold, cells is very small. They had 2 in there, and they got like the toilet in the corner, and just imagine like it's like right close to you, and it's 2 of y'all in the cell, but then they put a 3rd person in the cell because they overcrowded in Pennsylvania to the point in which they was selling bodies. I got caught up in that modern day slave trade where I got shipped to Virginia because Virginia built private prisons in which they didn't have the bodies to fill or the crime to fill, but PA had so much people that they had 3 to a cell, and you would be in a boat or whatever with the sheets or whatever like that, and it looked at like this. Then I seen a guy get stabbed real crazy over Kool-Aid. Some dude asked him for some Kool-Aid, he didn't give it to him. He stabbed him in his cellie like really, really bad. His cellie had just moved into the cell. So this scene reminded me of that because the Death of Marat, he's like stabbed, and there's a knife, so I put the shank there, but then I put the toilet there, and I basically got the concrete wall in there, and I like mixed it and got it on the bags too. This piece is called RDAP. I forgot what the residential drug something program. This is a federal. I wasn't in the feds, but my friend Jesse, he not here right now. Jared was in their program, so it's crazy. So like Agnes Gunn said, find a light. So some of these situations be crazy, but like I try to lighten it up because like my other works was just too heavy, making people sad. I had a show, an exhibition with HBO one time, and it was like people was crying and stuff like that. And it's like you can be re-traumatizing people even if you didn't intend to do that. So now I'm more mindful. So it was I was doing a lot of revisiting like the 80s. I'm 41, so like 85 I was 5, and I remember like the Raid commercials, and they be like, Raid. First the roaches be real tough, and they be like, what's it to you? You know what I'm saying? And then that Raid come out, they be like, Raid. They start like, they be all scared. So in the federal, the guards in the RDAP program, they tell you they'll take a year and a half off your sentence if you participate in this program. But the catch is, the guards will come up to you and they spray you, and you got to like a dead roach. You got to lay down and like, ah. So when Jesse was explaining Jesse Crimes, Google him when you can. He's funny. He like I call him White Jesus, but we mind because he look like that White Jesus. But he's funny. So he was like really upset about this, like and I know I could feel like I've been through experiences. So when he talking about it, so that's what inspired me to do this piece, even though I wasn't in the prison. They also make you dance on cue. They be like, dance, and you gotta like think. And he would do it like reenact and show his face, be like so serious and mad, like he still be mad. So I was just thinking like how crazy, and I incorporated the Ben-Day dots again, and I put them in the prison uniforms of federal prison, and basically tied it to that Raid commercial because it was like similar, and then like got the guard with the RDAP cane instead of the Raid cane. So this one is called Thug's Bunny. So this piece is I'm thinking about making an NFT of this piece as well. But but in Miami Art Basel, we got an NFT exhibit, and I think this is the piece that I'm going to use. So this is basically dealing with it's like two parts, so that's why I got the two thought processes, because one part is like where I was at with it when I chose the higher thought of like being an artist. This is me, this is in prison, this is a prisoner, like, because it's like this is different mindsets inside prison. So I tapped into my greatness and started believing in myself that I could be an artist and I could elevate out of my situation. So that's like the road I took. But then you have other guys who be thinking like the criminal thinking is like what's up, and that they super thugs and they they want to still be like criminals. They would have conversations in prison that was like still about like stupid stuff and like gather in the corner the same way how we would like be on the corners out in the streets.
Hello.
Okay, so just to...
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear
Is
you.
somebody on the phone?
Hear me? Hello?
Kenny, you I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, this is marking time. Is Kenny there?
Kenny is here.
Isabel, can you mute for just a sec? We're wrapping up with Russell, and then Kenny is next. So we're so happy that he's able to join us.
Do we need to call back?
No, you don't. How much time does he have on the phone right now?
I can barely see. I think he better go ahead and call back now.
Okay. Isabel, Russell says go ahead and we'll have Kenny speak now. We're going to show his images. Hi, Kenny.
The caller has...
Kenny hung up.
Can he call back, Isabel?
Yeah, Kenny's calling back.
Okay, sure.
So everyone, Kenny is calling in from Arkansas. He's where he's currently incarcerated, and he's going to talk about some of his organizing from prison. He was on death row for 27 years. He's now in general population, and NAACP Legal Defense Fund is working to have him released.
Apologies for the timing of that call. When it came in, I wanted to be sure to jump and accept it. Sorry.
This is a free call from Reems.
Kenny?
An incarcerated individual at Harvard unit. To accept this free call, press 1. To review, thank you for using security. You may start the conversation now. Hello?
Kenny, it's Nicole.
How are you doing this evening, Nicole?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing okay, dealing with the circumstances anyhow.
Kenny, I want to let you know your voice is being heard. We're in a room about 50 people. Are you good with that?
Yes. I can hear you loud and clear, Nicole. And you said about 50 people in the room?
Yeah. And you're on a panel with Amy, Russell, and Gary.
Okay, how are you doing, Amy and Gary?
And Russell. They're good.
Hi, Kenny.
Going good.
So we have some of your art up. Do you want to walk? Kenny?
Yes, go ahead.
We have some of your art up, but I think maybe you want to just share with us a little bit about your journey, and then I can tell you what pieces we have available.
Oh, I've been on a long journey, so it's what part of the journey are you speaking about? Because as I say, I've been on a long journey. I've been in solitary confinement for the past 30 years. I have been on death row for the vast majority of that time. I was just recently released off of death row and had my sentence committed to a life without parole, maybe a year or so ago. During the last 12 years, 10, 12 years of my confinement, I have produced a lot of art and managed to become an internationally recognized artist with the work that I'm doing also with my art, which is trying to educate the general public about the practice and the history of the death penalty in America. It is pretty much what I dedicated myself to as an activist, as an artist, and as an educator. So I would say that much in a nutshell.
Can you talk a little bit about some of your activism, more about your activism from prison, including the nonprofit you created? This panel, we're focusing on initiatives and organizations created by people who have been in prison or who are currently in prison.
Well, I would say this. My work primarily is around, as I say, educating people about the death penalty. Early on, as an artist, I recognized that there was power in art that I wasn't necessarily aware of until I began paying attention. I would have different debates with people about, the death penalty for different reasons, not just about whether it's right or wrong or what have you. But those debates would leave me sometimes walking away feeling as if there was nothing accomplished because that person was fixed in their opinion or ideology or what have you about what the conversation was around the death penalty. But when it came to art, it was kind of different. You could produce a piece of artwork and put it in front of a person and allow the artwork to speak for itself. It's kind of a little bit more difficult to argue with artwork, such as, I give an example. There's a piece of artwork that I produced early on about an individual by the name of George Stinney. George Stinney was 14 years old when he was executed. He was executed in the state of South Carolina. Here, maybe 70-something years later, we actually acknowledged that George was innocent of the crime that took place. Anyway, the portrait that I did of George Stinney was nothing more than his mugshot. I was able to get a copy of his mugshot photo, and I produced a rendition of his actual mugshot. So that piece of artwork is pretty much hanging on the wall. And when you see it, you're struck by, whoa, okay, who did this? Who is this individual? What is the backstory of this individual? Regardless of what you believe about the death penalty or what have you, you begin to ask yourself those particular questions. Man, wow, look at the details in the piece of art and those things. But when you begin to learn what George's story is, this is an individual that was sentenced to death. Yes, hold on. This looks like a little kid, though. Yeah, he was 14 years old. All of these things are coming to you through the art. You're learning at the same time. You're not having a debate with anyone. It is pretty much the art speaking to you, telling you the story. You then learn that George was so small that they had to actually stack dictionaries in the electric chair in order to electrocute him, which they did. But as you're looking at this artwork, you're beginning to think deeper. Whoa, we actually did this? Why did we do this? What was George sentenced to death for? All of those types of things. And as an artist, when I began to realize these things from the viewer, showing different pieces of artwork and having the viewer to see the artwork and begin to question themselves, question the artwork, question the system, I seen something that was a lot different than trying to sit there and have a debate with people about the issues dealing with capital punishment. This is not me trying to say the death penalty is right or wrong or any of those things. This is me trying to educate the general public about things that we are unaware of. Such as the fact of, at some point, we don't do this in our society today, but at some point we was actually finding it okay to execute individuals that was 14 years old. Such as today we're doing a lot of things with the death penalty that we're not questioning now, that maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we will be questioning. So when I began to realize these things, I started to produce more art around the death penalty. And it is what I have dedicated myself to. In the process of doing that, though, it all. We have a gangster museum in this country. We have a museum on the civil rights movement. African American History Museum that just opened. But we've been dealing with capital punishment for 400 plus years. Yet there's no museum in this country dedicated to the history of it. And there's so much that should be remembered. Not just the individuals that sitting on death row for the crimes that were committed, but the victims. I think that we should remember the victims that died in the Oklahoma City bombing. We should remember the individuals that sitting on death row and have been exonerated. All of these types of things. So as I began to realize and learn that there was no museum dedicated to capital punishment in this country, I began to say, why not? And it sparked me to get up and create a nonprofit from solitary confinement, dedicated to the death penalty museum. And that is what I have been doing for the last decade, trying to put myself in this nonprofit, which I titled Who Decides, and I titled it from that standpoint of who decides who lives and who dies when it comes to capital punishment. But I've been pushing the narrative of why we do not have a museum in this country, and it is time for us to build one. And this has led me all around the world. When I say all around the world, talking in Japan about the death penalty, where they have 80% of the people in Japan believe in the death penalty. But why do we not have museums on these things? Being able to find myself in front of human rights organizations, having this discussion, and even organizations here within the United States. It has been a long haul with the work that I've been doing, but as an activist trying to do the work, I can honestly say that I feel that I have accomplished a lot of things, and I've been able to educate a lot of people along the way, whether that is high school students, general people in society, or a class of people at different universities that I've had the opportunity to speak at. So that's pretty much what I would say about the work that I'm doing and the art that I have been creating over the last decade or so.
Kenny, we were looking at your portrait of George Stinney as you were talking about it, and now I'm moving to a portrait you made of a man eating ice cream. Can you tell us about that? And then after that, I want to make sure you have a chance to dialogue with the rest of the panelists while you're still on the phone.
Okay. Well, that is an interesting piece of artwork as well. In fact, I just, a few days ago, had a conversation with a lady out of New York that is interested in purchasing that artwork. And when she learned, again, you all see this picture of an individual sitting there eating, it looks like ice cream. I don't know if it's ice cream or cake. I just painted what it was that I saw in the actual image. But that is an image of an individual by the name of Reems. Wendell was in his early 20s, and he is, at that point right there, as that picture was snapped, he's waiting to be led to the gallows. He's actually guilty of the charge that he is convicted for, but he's eating his last meal. And I titled that piece, America's Last Public Hanging, because that was actually the last public hanging that took place in America. In this actual painting, as I say, Bethel is eating his last meal, and he is pretty much waiting after eating his last meal to be led to the gallows. Now, outside, as he's eating this last meal, there is about 30 to 50,000 people, literally. It's took place in Kentucky. It's about 30 to 50,000 people who have came from all over the United States to witness this individual being led to the gallows and hung. His execution would mark the first time in America that a woman would oversee an execution, and this lady overseeing the execution because her husband was actually the sheriff. But before Bethel's execution, her husband died. So she stepped in and took his place to oversee making her the first woman in America to actually oversee an execution. But after they executed Rainey in the gallows, that would be the last time that anyone would be publicly hung in America. And that is what that actual image is, him eating his last meal.
Thank you so much, Kenny. I'm going to introduce you to Shani, who is the moderator, and is going to now lead the group in a discussion.
Thank you so much. Let's just take a moment and express our gratitude to Kenny. I'm so grateful that he's able to be here. So, and Gary, this discussion component will involve you again too, please, so please feel free to unmute. In one of the earlier presentations today, I was really struck by this idea that both artists and people who are incarcerated share this desire to know, or this deep knowledge of what it means to be free. And I wonder, as people who have occupied or used to occupy both of those identities, what are your freedom dreams? What does freedom mean to you, and how does art anchor it?
I can be brief with that. Freedom is like, for me personally, this is where I'm at with it. It's like your state of mind. Because it's like you could be out in the world and not behind bars, but still be like captive in different ways. And then like, even when I was inside, like I was able to have like tunnel vision and use art to like escape in a way. So it's like, cause like what is really free is like a lot connected to that. So it's like where you at in your head if you're fortunate enough to have like mental health to like concentrate on whatever it is you want to like escape or focus on whatever at that moment. And then it can even open doors for you, because like that's what happened with me.
It's like a seriously heavy question. I think as like a small white child, I like definitely believed in like freedom in America in a different way than a lot of like my close friends maybe ever did. And so I think that like my introduction to becoming a second-class citizen was different because I didn't start there. So I'm keenly aware of that, and I think something that I've noticed is like, I guess I don't think that I'll ever feel free again. My felony is constantly an issue for me, despite where I'm at in life and what I've been able to accomplish. It continues to plague me. And it's created like lasting impacts in my personal relationships, especially with my daughter. And so I feel like in many ways I'm still paying dues, at the least paying dues to the carceral system at this point. But what I guess I'm excited about in that question is that I have hope that freedom can be attained. But I believe that we have to do it together. Like, I don't think that one group can just do it for another group or whatever. Like, we have to go together. We have to rise together. And so that's what I've been focusing my angst and my joy around, is like, how do we collectively rise and maybe find freedom somewhere else?
Gary, how would you answer that question?
The ability to sit right here on this Zoom, and I couldn't do that. I had the ability to see, they would say, shut it down or stop it. You know, we have to stop playing music. And I'm playing this from my soul. You know, and I share with people that you can go buy all the stuff in the world and make you sound better, but if you don't have it in your heart, you're not going to get it. You know, for me, no different what you buy for. And like the brother was talking about death row, I feel compelled to continue to talk about the Anti-Terrorist Act that write and wrote, and Bill Clinton put it into administration, it made it law, because people in America, just because they go to prison, they're not terrorists. It's bad short. And we're always remembered by the worst thing that they've ever done. In order to make life and things better, we have to do better. And that's why I created shower work, so I can give back and help the people. And give them a second opportunity to have a first-class life, because there's a lot that goes into that I'm not discussing. And I feel so good to be able, just to be able, because being free. And with the fact, they have some of my art. You say the building collapsed, but it took them 2 years to tell me the building collapsed. So am I really not supposed to believe that the building collapsed? That's what being free too. And I can't go back and see what it used to be. But moving forward, things are going to be so wonderful that I'm going to let the past be the past and the future be the future.
Beautiful. Kenny, in your work, it seems like you found a way to get free, even in your current circumstance. I wonder how you would answer this question. What does freedom mean to you?
Whoa. Powerful question. Freedom means a lot of things to me. A lot of times we take freedom as just the liberty that, like here in prison, a lot of us look at freedom as just being able to be out of confinement, just being able to be in society. But I have learned that freedom is deeper than that. My years in prison, as I said, I spent my entire time in solitary confinement. I've been in solitary confinement ever since I was 18 years old. So you begin to look at freedom a lot different as you begin to evolve as a creature in solitary confinement. Freedom is not just being able to have the ability to roam and go and do things as you please. Freedom is a lot of things. I say freedom is choice, being able to choose. Freedom is having free spirit. I also learned that there's a lot of people in society that are more combined than the individuals who are sitting in prison, simply because their prison becomes the things that they may be addicted to, the things that they allow to control them, whether that is drugs, alcohol, sex, those types of things. I would say more than anything, freedom is knowledge of self. Knowledge of self. When I say knowledge of self, I mean that on a deep level. Knowing yourself from within, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, those types of things. And I say that from the standpoint, as I've had conversations and spoke to different people on forums around the world, a lot of people have said to me that I am more free in prison, in solitary confinement, than a lot of people in society. And I think that the people begin to resonate and understand that for me simply because of the way I think, my mental aspect, and that only came along when I began to recognize and realize that freedom begins with knowledge of self, not being able to break free from chains or any of those things. So that is what I would say to you all about freedom.
Thank you so much. We're about to open it up to each one of you to ask any questions that you might have for our panelists. But before I do that, I'd like to ask Gary just to speak a bit about your work with Showerworks. Can you explain to us what that program is, the impetus behind it, and what you hope to achieve?
I'll be giving them 15 minutes per shower. I'll be able to pull them on the location and shower. See, they have stationary. We're going to go mobile and stationary now. We just had a meeting this morning. Just opened my eyes to so many things. And with Food Very Center wants to partner with us give them jobs in the event that they desire to work. Being in this situation, if you look at it, it's veterans, it's people that were formerly incarcerated, it's people that have been moved out of their housing because the way the establishments went up, inflation, everything is going up, and the money isn't going up. So there are some people that don't have drug problem out of their home because they can't afford it anymore. So these are the things that I would like to focus on and pay more attention to help those people. I look sometimes when I'm going down the street, they be asking for money. So I said, well, can this individual work? If that individual can work, the chance of me giving some money is very slim. But if it looks like they have a problem, I'm going to do something for them. I'm trying to get more about people that help us out. I would like to help more people than just working with whatever you can just help so much. Thank you very much. I appreciate you letting me speak about shower work.
Thank you for your incredible work. And because we lost a little bit of that audio, Nicole, do you want to fill in some of the
I
blanks?
just wanted to interject that Gary has a nonprofit, and Lori Brooks actually worked with Gary when he was incarcerated. Lori Brooks runs the William James Association. You can also chime in. So it's a mobile shower stand for unhoused people, and it was partly inspired because many of his friends he was incarcerated with, they come out of prison and they be unhoused. So it's something that he started out of a need and started with no money, and it's grown into a nonprofit. And he has visions of expanding that, and it's also in the San Francisco Bay Area where we know housing is such a crisis. And there are so many people who are actually working in San Francisco and are unhoused. So he's trying to address that, but specifically thinking about the population of people who are formerly incarcerated. Like his very good friend, Ronnie Goodman, who is also in working time and who died on the streets of San Francisco in August of 2021. 2020? 2020. Lori, do you want to speak a little bit? Just can chime in or not?
No.
Okay.
No.
Lori's going to be on a panel tomorrow.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gary. Gary, Lori is here in the house.
I called him before this.
Can you let him know that Lori?
Gary, I don't know if you're able to hear that, but Lori is also here with us today. And so Nicole was just filling in some of the blanks about what you were just saying because the audio was a little bit spotty. But we were talking a bit more about shower works, and Lori's here as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your incredible work. It's inherent to this idea that we were talking about earlier about what does freedom mean to you. Dignity is deeply embedded in that. And the work that you're doing helps give that to more people, and we're grateful for that. So let's open up the space. Any questions that you all have in the audience? Yeah.
My name is Greg Wiley. I collect art, but I also collect prison artifacts and photographs. The picture of George Stinney, I actually have a picture of a painting of George Stinney in my house. Amy's, I believe you saw that when you came. So it's from the same photograph, and it's similar, but it's kind of interesting, that seeing different artists interpret that photograph is it still has a power just seeing different artists interpret it. But I brought in some of my photos in my photo collection, and it was kind of interesting that there was a lot of intersection about what you were talking about, because I brought in a picture of two brothers who were executed in, I forgot what state it was, But it was they showed them on their last, like in their last hours, and they were hugging their mother, and it really felt kind of like an invasion of privacy, really. But it was really a powerful picture. And then there's another picture that I brought with me that of a boy, excuse me, a person who was exonerated. Well, he wasn't exonerated. He was free from off of death row, and he's standing around. Well, there's reporters standing around him, and they're kind of self-congratulating him. But the kid, he kind of just has this look like, well, I'm still going to be stuck here. But yeah, so I was just kind of like.
You have 1 minute left.
Let's let Kenny respond.
Kenny, if you'd like to either respond to that question or offer any final thoughts in your remaining minute.
Well, let me hang up and call directly back, and I will try to respond to the question then, okay?
Okay, thank you. You want to go ahead?
Stacy again. I have been really moved by all of the art, but Russell, you're turning the images and themes of Marvel on their heads to create accessibility to a different set of ideas. Certainly for me, it kind of blew my mind. And so my question is, does Marvel know about you? Because they should. I mean, that's just, I think, pretty groundbreaking.
Thank you. When I had that thought that if they don't know, they gonna know soon because I got more works coming. And then it's funny, George Stinney was brought into the conversation because in the same exhibit, I did a tie. I made up a painting that was coming up with George Stinney.
You may start the conversation now.
And tied into DC Comics.
Yes.
Thanks, Russ. Kenny, can you hear us again?
Kenny?
Yes, I'm back on the line now.
Okay, fantastic. And you were about to provide an answer to our previous question, so please go ahead.
Can you repeat the question for me, please? Someone tell me what the question was again?
Do you want to summarize the question?
If you could just summarize the question briefly.
Well, I guess I'm sorry.
I mean, I think part of what I heard asked is about working with those images of people.
Kenny, it's Nicole. Part of what I heard in the question, what I heard, and it might be my own just interpretation, is for you, how those images of people who've been condemned and killed, especially like George Stinney at age 14, a lot of people have been working with that, including Russell, and I think we should put up Russell. Russell, is that on the Malin Gallery website? So we should pull up Russell. Russell did a work on George Stinney too, and the question was about, in some ways, the recirculation of those images of violence, just and how powerful they are. If you could just maybe think about like that, and also, just the history of these kind of images of violence, especially against Black people.
One of the things I would say, just from the images standpoint, is let's take in mind, it's one thing of looking at visual art that an individual may create, but it's another thing of looking at it from a standpoint where these different photos, like the photo of George Stinney that was snapped his mugshot, we did not realize that was art. It was art. The little photo was art. We just reproducing that image. Such as the image that he spoke about where you have the two brothers and those things. These are not just photos. They art. We are only years later looking at them and reflecting on them and speaking about what we see from a ideology standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, or what do it needs to be. As he said, it feels like someone was invading space. Once you learn what the image in the picture means and say. So, there's so many things that can be said about the images when we are speaking to people about the death penalty. Why, what, when, all of those types of things come into play. So I don't necessarily know where to begin in having the discussions when we talk about the different images that surround people when it comes to capital punishment, because there's so many questions to be asked and so many things to give answers or try to give answers to, I would say.
As we pull up Russell's work that Nicole was just referencing, I have one other question that I'd like to ask to the panel, and that is, in my work now, which is called Lineage, I'm exploring artists' journey to their work, and also who are the artists, particularly the ancestors, who root and inspire what you do. So I wonder if you could talk to me about the moment you began to call yourself an artist, and is there somebody whose name you'd like to call into the room that served as an inspiration for you?
Yeah, I think I started to call myself an artist at some point during my incarceration, and I remember being really excited when I actually got reclassed as an artist, so that was my official job when I left, which felt like a victory in itself, and then also like an impossibility. How could I ever have a different job title? How could I ever do something else? And so I think the journey to calling myself an artist is really more about the journey to becoming a professional working artist and not working other kinds of jobs. So that's been exciting. And I don't know, to name a singular artist that influenced me is like almost impossible. Yeah. I think that what I'll say is because I'm self-taught, the artists that influenced me were originally the artists that I was working with and creating with and having conversations with, and those are still the artists that inspire me. So whether that's a formerly incarcerated person or not, it's just like being in the room with artists, deep diving into their process and how they're constructing things and their materials and all that kind of stuff is incredibly helpful in evolving my journey.
Everybody know I'm gonna say Basquiat, so I'm gonna say Basquiat. That's one, but I also like Gustav Gerbeigh a lot. Very similar to I view myself kind of like him. He changed the game. He was like revolutionary, bringing realism into like that fantasy kind of art where they had like angels and stuff flying around and stuff like that. And he was like, I want to paint real stuff. I want to paint this funeral and things like that. And then he wound up in prison for his views. And then his sister was like bringing him fruit and stuff, so he was doing like still lifes. So it was really kind of similar to like my story. And I just touch on this piece real quick because he was talking about like how the different interpretations of destiny, and I have a different approach. So that was interesting that he brought that up, and then how you thank you for appreciating my work. So right here, it was this movie called The Green Mile, and it was basically George Stinney's story. So I tied in The Green Mile, but then they made him a man, like he was acting like a child. And I always be seeing like the symbolism in like the movies and stuff. So it's a DC comic character called Shazam. He's a little kid, he'd be like Shazam, and he'd get hit with lightning and then he turned to an adult. So I tied it into how they turned Stinny into an adult in the movie, because I guess it felt better to kill the grown big man where he was like all husky, he was acting like a child. It was like kind of weird. And then also Stinny's story, then I had thought that they set them on Bibles, but it probably was dictionaries, or maybe they changed the story to dictionaries because they didn't want you to know that they set them on Bibles or whatever. Like where was God in this when this was happening? So I just tied it all in and called it Shocking, because the electric is involved in all the stories.
Gary and Kenny, I'll invite you to offer your answers to that question. When did you begin to call yourself artist? And are there any inspirations that you'd like to call into the room of artists who inspired you in your work?
Well, for myself, I would say I've been an artist my entire life. It wasn't until being in prison in solitary confinement that I actually began to take art serious and began to call myself an artist. But I think that I would begin to label myself an artist and take ownership of that title when the prison began taking my art from me. I would create different pieces of artwork that would inspire or amaze people, and whoa, wow, those types of things in the prison. Instead of trying to support me as an artist, they would, take my art from me and just would not allow me to sit it out of the prison and those things. And when I began to realize those elements or what have you, I began to take ownership of myself as an artist and call myself an artist. Even though, as I said, I've been an artist my whole life, I just never labeled myself as an artist. When you ask me who am I would say I was an artist until those points in my life, as I say, with the prison. As far as my inspirations of different artists in the world, I can give you a lot of people that I would say, when you talk about the Van Gogh or those type of people, Andy Warhol and those people, but I wouldn't even say those individuals. And I'm saying this to you all literally when I tell you all that I label this to be the world's famous artist. And I would say God. When I think about the world and look at the world, whether that's a rainbow or that's how I see the earth, how it is shaped in different forms, whether that's looking at the mountains or the Grand Canyon. I think all of these things are different forms of art, or how we sometimes do the things that we do, call it poetry in motion. That's art. Words, that's art. I'm not just here talking to you all about visual art. I'm speaking about art in all types of measures, whether that's taking a photo of a scenery that inspires or makes you think. All of these things are art, and I think that is God's imprint on the world. So I would say God is my artist.
Now that's an answer.
I'm good. I actually realized I was an artist when I seen German Young Bobby. German Young Bobby passed on, but he used to tell me how him and his partner used to clown me about my art. He said, man, that ain't, but then he sees that when I do come home, he say, man, that's some good stuff. You're an artist, man, you're an artist. I knew then when I was trying to do the work, I was an artist. And even more so now, being accepted into quite a few prestigious places, I feel very proud. And through the organization, William James and Jack, they made it to where I can really feel like I'm an artist, because a lot of people are artists, but they don't have an opportunity to show their art. And the more people show their art, the more people realize what they have is art, and they become better at it. And I'm gonna be doing art the rest of my life.
Thank you. So as we bring this panel to a close, I'll invite, if there's one last question from the audience, then I'll invite the artists to address that in their closing statements. Do we have any final questions?
I have a question about...
If it's okay, sir, I'm just going to invite a voice that hasn't been in the room yet, if you'd like. We have one last question over here. Thank you for accommodating it.
Thank you. And since it's probably not another question, it's a lot of it is a comment, and it's to the things that Amy was speaking on. I've heard a lot about Amy, and one thing I learned today was one of the most impressive yet. I know that from my stint in prison that prison can be it's just a hard place. And the thing I think about and talk about a lot is how one of the most amazing things about prison is how they're oppressed, right? And it's not just in prison, but whenever you find oppressed people, the ability of the oppressed to take the instruments of their oppression and utilize them for their liberation, right? And that's just an amazing thing. But and that's what happens in prison a lot. And for you to be able to for you to be in prison and to be able to envision yourself as something more than what you are, because we talked about what freedom means, and to me it just means the ability to become everything that you were born to be, right? And to be fulfilled in life. And so for you to be able to see yourself in that light is one level of freedom, probably the greatest level of freedom. And for you to see yourself as an artist was a high level of freedom. But then for you to be able to almost bend the will of your enemy or your oppressor and make them call you an artist, like that's amazing. Like it's one thing that had accolades, but I know just from prison to be classified, right? Because it's classes in prison, you get a job. To be classified as an artist, like that's astounding. That's amazing, and I think it's beautiful and something just to reflect on. It's just tripping me out right now. That's a great thing.
Thank you so much. I felt like it was a huge win for real, because it was something that I wanted for myself that I was able to get. And it taught me a lot about advocacy and how to build community and how to leverage privilege and how to get other people reclassed, you know what I'm saying? So it turned out to be a beautiful thing, but thank you for the comment, because it was a win. They fucked up when they sent me in. They still mad about it now, you know, so.
Gary and Kenny, I'd like to invite your voices into the room with any concluding comments. Gary, we'll start with you.
Kenny is calling back.
Oh, okay, thank you. Gary, any concluding thoughts?
Okay, I just unmuted. The conclusion is everybody is somebody, and I treat everybody with love and dignity and respect, because if we all reach somebody, we can help somebody. And that's my concluding thought. And life is so wonderful. My worst day out here, well, my best day in prison, can't even entertain the thought of my worst day out here. I understand the struggle and what it takes to survive. And if we pursue life with the things we used to do and with the things we should do, and ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because I was afraid to ask for help, and I didn't get any because I didn't ask for it. But when I do ask for help, oh my God, a lot of people help me. So with that, I'm good.
Beloved community. Russell, your concluding thoughts?
Well, I don't got nothing too deep. It was just beautiful to be in this space. Especially that comment about that was one of my plans to change my title from a inmate to whatever they was calling me, and even personally before, because I did engage into criminal activities, and I had like a thought of myself of like as of right now I'm like a drug dealer, you know, like that's like my title, and I was like I'm going to change that to artist, and I'm still working on it because like now a lot of people I'm a formerly incarcerated artist. But I'm out to just be a great artist.
And Kenny, if we have you back, we'll give you the final word. Is Kenny back with us?
Yes, I'm back with you all.
What are your concluding thoughts for us, Kenny?
Well, this is what I would like to get everybody to think about as I get ready to end here. We're here today talking about art, and one of the things that I try to get people to think about all the time is they label you as an artist simply because you create, you make, you sing, you do the things to you. I try to get people from the visual artist standpoint to understand we are all artists. You might not look at it or believe or think about it. What I try to get people to look at is, as a little kid, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, whatever grade that was, we all had coloring books. We all had crayons and was coloring or what have you in school. Some of us just choose to continue to do that. Others stop. For us that continue to do it, we label us as artists, but we're all artists. We're all creative. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from a visual art standpoint. It can be from writing a song, creating a beat, or coming up with a story. We are all artists. And I ask you all to pay more attention to art in the world and appreciate it more. Whether it is us watching that movie, listening to that song, or going to the gallery and looking at the art on the wall. Look at art for what it really, really means, and how is it shaping and changing your world. Whether it's you liking that song, or liking that movie, or that painting on the wall. So, hey, let's respect art. And I say that seriously. Let's respect art for what it really is.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking all of our panelists, not only in today's panel, but on the entire day of extraordinary presentations. We're so grateful. We invite you all to join us.
On behalf of the Marking Time team, Anissa, Xavier, Nicole, and Shani, we want to thank you so much for coming today. Give yourselves a round of applause. We would like to invite you back to the Cincinnati Graduate Hotel for our wonderful, wonderful reception. And so, just so we can get out of here a little quicker, we would really love for you to clean up with us. We would really love that. And again, thank you so very much, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.